When we ask people why they're coming here, the answer is invariably the same. And it's not the president. They actually say Obama said it's okay to come. So there's a belief that they will remain, and the belief is true. There's several large smuggling organizations that are not necessarily cartel, that are around the world, and this is what they do. So when these guys sign up to be transported into the United States, they're given a script. They're told what to say.
All righty, good morning and welcome to San Diego People. I'm Dan Plante. Today, it's an eye-opening reality check on the border, at least we hope. What's really happening down there? Are the terrorists sneaking into our country on something called asylum? And why are thousands of illegal immigrants no longer being shipped back across the border where they came from, even when they're busted coming into the United States? Well, today we're talking to two people very much involved in this issue. Chris Harris, to my direct left, represents the National Border Patrol Council. He is right there in the trenches. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in. We also have Enrique Morones for the Border Angels, founder of the Border Angels, which is a humanitarian group that helps immigrants who need it in a variety of ways. And we're going to talk to you guys in just a minute. But we wanted to set this up with the story. I went out there to the border with Chris and spent the day there to check it out. Take a look, and then we're going to talk about what you see.
So something as simple as the whitewash on the fence, you can see it's typically brown.
It's one of the most dangerous places in America, the border between Mexico and San Diego. Some say build a wall and we'll be safe. Truth is, there is no wall and there never has been.
I like to point out to people that the wall is a misnomer. It's a fence. We keep saying walls. Nobody builds walls anymore around prisons. That was all old school. Now it's all fences. A wall is ridiculously expensive. So I think when anybody says wall, I have to guess that they mean a fence.
And it's a fence that's been growing, at least along the San Diego-Mexico border.
So the fences are effective as long as you have the agents and the infrastructure to back it up. If you don't, then they'll be torn down quickly.
If you spend some time with the Border Patrol, you'll find a complex formula to keep the border safe. It takes more than a fence. It takes people, a resource that is in short supply.
We're about 2,000 agents below the level that Congress set for the minimum level for the Border Patrol. So manpower is becoming an issue throughout the United States. It's not a secret. That's something that they need to fix.
That's not the only thing that needs fixing. Even if thousands of agents were hired and every illegal is captured, the policy from the top is letting them go as fast as they are caught.
When we ask people why they're coming here, the answer is invariably the same. And it's not the president. They actually say Obama said it's okay to come. So there's a belief that they will remain. And the belief is true.
As a result of this belief or policy, immigrants detained in the U.S. are quickly released. As long as they claim political asylum, they are processed and let go on this side of the border.
In a way, we're just a welcoming crew. We're a Walmart welcoming crew. It's really disheartening to our guys to know we have control of the border, but all you have to do now is say you have a credible fear and you're going to be released.
So no matter how many fences, cameras, or agents say the right thing and get a free pass back to the streets of the U.S.
We're going to take them to the trolley stop at the San Ysidro trolley, and we're going to let them go.
What you're looking at here is referred to as the Duncan Hunter Wall, the former congressman who worked very hard to get this up. In fact, it's made out of old military material that the military wasn't using anymore. Now I want to show you how close we are to Las Americas, the shopping mall down here. There is a third fence, however, to prevent people from going into the mall. But as you can see, they have their ways of getting over. The barbed wire is put there to keep them from going over, but you can see they stomped on the barbed wire and then they crawl over the fence. A couple of seconds later, there they are in the parking lot of the shopping mall.
That is the only thing that prevents you from coming into the United States.
Which is nothing.
Which is nothing.
Since then, another layer of fencing has been added, closing up huge gaps where people would simply walk into the United States. These days, some of those people are even scarier than the drug cartels.
Not just one or two, but lots of people that mean harm to this country are slipping in. Everything from criminals to terrorists.
In fact, we don't really know who's being caught and released. Many of these people work off of a script, and they say the magic words, asylum.
Every day has to be by the hundreds, if not close to 1,000, every single day.
In the end, it's a matter of politics from the very top. The message is out.
One of the things we actually absolutely have to have is the President of the United States and the Secretary of Homeland Security to come out and say, look, This is a treasured system. It's being abused. It's going to stop today.
All righty, back here with our guests here, and asylum, terrorists, catch and release. We're going to try to separate fact from fiction today, or at least try, right? So let's get to it. We are joined again by Chris Harris with the National Border Patrol Council and Enrique Morones, the director of the Border Angels, and in fact the founder of the Border Angels. Good morning to both of you. Enrique, you saw that story. Do you have any general comments?
Sure. Well, one of the general comments is there's a tremendous amount of misinformation in that story. The terminology, for example, we call it a wall. We don't call anybody an illegal human being, illegal immigrant. These are people. These are people. They might be undocumented, but they're not
illegal aliens, you mean?
Illegal alien or illegal. There's no such thing as an illegal human being. So we don't use that terminology. And terminology is important. You know, at one time people were called wetbacks. They were called 3/5 of a human being. They were called WAPs, without papers. These are all derogatory terms that were actually in the books before. And then finally people stepped back and said, hey, wait a minute, that was very offensive. So we have the same feeling about a lot of this terminology. But terminology aside, you know, that wall that's up there covers about 1/3 of the border, which is a 2,000-mile border. About 700 miles has wall. And it's led to the death of thousands of people. And unlike in the story, the overwhelming majority of people that are coming seeking asylum, they don't get it. And those that are allowed into the country temporarily are mostly deported back, which is very inhumane. And I assure you, the people aren't saying the President Obama has told us that we can come. I mean, I've been to those countries in Central America and Mexico, and as a matter of fact, Mexican unauthorized migration has dropped 40%. 40%. The largest group per capita now are actually people from Central America. And the people
but they are coming through Mexico.
They're coming through Mexico, or they're coming through other ports of entry. We know, like in the case of terrorism, for example, we know that there's been cases through the Canadian border where there's no wall, ports of entry like harbors and airports. We don't welcome any of that. But some of the worst terrorists, of course, are homegrown. They've never gone anywhere. So to kind of paint that brush, like the people crossing, President Obama's inviting them, they're dangerous criminals. There are some criminals, but the overwhelming majority, just like when your forefathers and foremothers came, are not criminals. They're simply looking for a better life. And the overwhelming majority of undocumented people, 250 million, according to the United Nations, are not coming to the U.S. We have 11 million here. 239 million are in other countries.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's a correct number, 11 million?
No, I disagree with that. I think anybody that's dealt with the numbers and sees the actual numbers that we do, you and I discussed this yesterday, that came from a Pew report quite a few years ago that gave a range between 11 million and 18 million. We know that's numbers changed. Anybody in the United States Border Patrol is going to tell you they think it's probably about 30 million, but even the high end of the Pew report several years ago was 18 million. And we know it's gone up since then.
All right, let's address the catch and release, for lack of a better term here. And yesterday, basically, you told me that most of these people that are captured are essentially processed, and I guess from there they have a promise to appear, but after the promise to appear and after the processing, what happens?
Well, in all due respect to Enrique, when we were talking, yes, we were talking about political asylum. We weren't talking about people just jumping over for a better life, coming from Mexico. Different category, weren't discussing that. What we're seeing every single day is people coming through the port of entry or coming through the border, giving up to us and claiming credible fear, claiming political asylum. Each and every day at my station, we are holding at least 50 Haitians, people who are claiming to be from Haiti, and we don't always know that to be a fact. We're claiming to be from Haiti. They're coming through the port of entry. The port processes them, sends them to us. We hold them. ICE ERO comes to our station, picks them up, and then takes them to a trolley or bus stop and lets them go.
On this side of the border?
On this side of the border. That's happening each and every day.
Is that new?
I'm down there. What's happening now is new. That the abuse of the system, which I told you yesterday is a wonderful system. We need to keep the system of asylum. We don't want to get rid of that. We don't want to see something bad happen that causes a knee-jerk reaction in Congress, which causes them to temporarily or permanently shut it down. That is a beacon of hope for people, but it's being seriously misused and abused now. So everybody's coming, not everybody, most people are coming now, claiming credible fear. I think I mentioned if they're coming from China, they claim that they're being persecuted as Christians. When you ask them, tell me about Jesus Christ, they'll say, through an interpreter, who's that? Now, I might not be a great Christian, but I kind of know the central tenet of that faith is to know who Jesus Christ is.
Right. Now, let's talk about the script. And Enrique, I don't know if you know about this, but apparently there is some kind of a script that is given to some of these people where if they say the right words, the magic words, the door opens. What is this script you're talking about?
So we know that there's certain major smuggling organizations, and not necessarily with cartel, around the world, operating out of the Middle East and in different countries, Southeast Asia. And for each area they're coming from, they have a script. And we know it's a script because it's the same language each and every person uses. And if you push them off script, you ask them some questions, and they'll immediately try to go back to script. So if you're coming from China, the script is you're persecuted because you're Chinese or you're Christian. If you're coming from Southwest Asia, we get a lot of people coming there from Nepal. Everybody and their brother is claiming to be from Nepal. If that was the case, there'd be nobody left in Nepal. And their script says political parties are fighting. That's it. When you start pushing into which political parties, they get a little confused and they just go back to political parties are fighting. Yeah. So each area has a different script to fit that area, and they know what the parameters are for the asylum system, so they know what words trigger that.
And then as a result, if they follow this script, the United States is required to essentially let them stay on this side of the border. And we're talking about not necessarily people coming from Mexico.
Until they're adjudicated. They're supposed to see an asylum officer. Yeah. The problem is, are they going to see those asylum officers? And if not, then is anybody looking for them? Yeah. And we don't have enough asylum officers. I mean, I think Enrique and I could agree on that. We need more people, more immigration judges. The wait is too long. But the fact is, we know that up to 80% of people aren't showing up.
But it's important to note. Well, what's important to note is that undocumented people coming into this country has dropped 40%. There's been a dramatic drop.
From Mexico, you're talking about?
I'm talking about overall. There is a rise now in people coming through the Tijuana port of entry claiming asylum from Haiti and from other countries, which is unusual.
But how do we know they're from Haiti?
Well, you can do a background check. The United States has incredible intelligence. You'll find out.
I'll disagree.
Are there people that slip through? There might be, but the overwhelming majority of the people that are coming into this country or countries around the world that are not their own are looking for an opportunity to be able to continue to live, because they can't find work, there's a political asylum, religious freedom, there's environmental situation. There's lots of reasons why people cross borders. As I mentioned, the overwhelming majority are not coming to the United States. They're going to other countries. And the United States is not the most generous country when it comes to immigration. When you look at asylum alone, the United States is around 17th when you look at it per capita. When you look at it as far as welcoming migrants, letting them get a visa, because the overwhelming majority of these people do not qualify for visas. That wall, Operation Gatekeeper, has led to the death, Border Angels estimates, to approximately 11,000 people. The U.S. government and the Mexican government thinks it's about half that. But whether it's 6,000 or 11,000, these people should not be dying. And I'm not saying that the countries they come from shouldn't be doing more. Of course they should. But the countries they come from usually have nothing to do with the situation that the United States gets involved in when the previous administration sets the world on fire in the Middle East, President Bush, or President Reagan in Central America in the 70s and 80s. The chickens come home to roost. Eventually, there is a consequence. The U.S. is by far the #1 consumer of illegal drugs. It consumes about 30% of the world's natural resources. Where is the fairness in that? The U.S. only has 4% of the world's population. And the latest Pew study talks about the number of undocumented people in the United States. They actually say it's about 10.5 million now. The numbers have gone down. So we can go back and forth on numbers and so forth. But look at your own case history. When your forefathers and foremothers came, there was basically no illegal way to come. People just came. Today, the people coming from Latin America specifically, for the most part, they have no legal way to come. And I don't encourage them crossing in the desert and risking their lives. I don't encourage that at all. But it's happening, and we should all be working to create bridges and understanding and helping other nations instead of always pointing fingers.
All right, we'll talk about that when we come back. We'll touch on some other topics, including what is being done in a positive manner to try and come together, both of your sides, and help these folks out, because we know as your position of the Border Council, I spoke with you yesterday, and it appears you have a big heart. And so I think you guys share that in terms of the empathy for these people. So we'll talk about that, and we'll also talk about how many terrorists are coming through. How do we know if terrorists are coming through our border? We'll have that and a whole lot more, and maybe they can come together on some solutions that we can move forward on. We'll be back in a minute. Alrighty, welcome back on this Sunday morning. We are talking about the issues at the border. Obviously, this has become a huge issue in the presidential campaign. Donald Trump says, build a wall, build a wall. Well, let's take that as a jumping off point with our guests here, Chris Harris from the National Border Patrol Council, which is the Border Patrol, and Enrique Morones, who is the founder of the Border Angels, which is a humanitarian group that helps immigrants as they come across the border or even on the other side of the border. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning, Dan.
So let's talk about, people don't understand now when whoever it is claims political asylum, that they are processed, given a promise to appear, and then dropped off on this side of the border. Some people are shaking their heads saying, wait a minute, how do you do that? Why aren't they in a holding cell until we can track these people down? We don't know who these people are. They could have fake IDs. They could have no ID at all. There could be no way to trace them at all.
Well, most of the people don't get asylum, so it's not like you just go there and say, I want asylum, here's the script, and you get it. It's not like that. It's not like that. Some people are getting in, and we have seen documents that have been replicated by these organized crime groups that people use and say, and you're saying that's the same document the other person had as far as the reason they're leaving. So there's some truth in that. But the overwhelming majority of the people are not going to get asylum, not even going to be able to be let into the United States. So we are very active, Border Angels, in speaking throughout Mexico, speaking in international media to other countries about don't do it. Don't do it. You're not going to get in. Most of the people that apply are not going to get in, and those that do get in are going to be asked to be sent back for the most part. It's true that some of them don't show up to the immigration court. It's true. But the overwhelming majority of these people need to know, and I've dealt directly with the White House, with President Obama, about the fact that we came up with a program called Aquí No Allá, which means here, not there. When the Central American children were turning themselves into the Border Patrol on the Texas border 2 summers ago, I said, why don't you have more presence? The U.S. have more presence in El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. So that mom or dad that's going to send her child with a group of people heading north will find out right there in their home country whether they're going to qualify or not. Instead of turning that child over to a stranger and all the horrific things that can happen to them on the journey, which do happen, won't happen. So we're asking for the same type of thing, whether it's Haiti, where the people maybe were working down in Brazil, getting ready for the Olympics, and then they got a temporary pass to be in Mexico for a certain amount of time, and they take advantage of that to go to the northern border and apply for asylum, because we don't want them sending information back to their home country saying, you're going to get in. One of the big things that Chris could really help us out with is they get a number. They get a number when they're going to be appearing before the Customs and Border Patrol people to be heard, the cases to be heard. Well, they'll use that number thinking they're going to get in, and they'll call and they'll go, oh yeah, I'm number 18, I'm going to be getting in. That's not the case. There's a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of it is spread by the smugglers and so forth. But I think the U.S. government and these other countries need to do a better job in letting the people know that there is no free pass, that it's most likely they're not going to get in, to know the realities of the situation. And even at its peak, even when we, the Mexican community, were the largest group of undocumented people crossing, it was still a small percentage of the population. Why in the world would you want to leave your homeland? People don't want to leave their homeland unless they have to. So these people that are crossing not because they want to, but because they have to. And they risk their lives in the desert crossing. And one of the things that I want to mention before I forget, because it's very important, we have a very solid working relationship with the Border Patrol. When we have people in trouble, like on Easter Sunday, we received a call of a woman whose 3 brothers were missing. They were about to die. She had received a phone call. And through our network, we were able to collaborate with Grupo Beta, which is the search and rescue on the Mexican side, sort of, and Borstar, which is definitely search and rescue on the U.S. side. Those 3 lives were saved on Easter Sunday because of the collaboration. We had a case where we had the situation of the Children's Day event, which we've done 3 times now. We're working with the Border Patrol. The door at Friendship Park is open temporarily, first 2 minutes, then 15, now 20 minutes, and children are allowed to hug their parents for the first time in a long time, or the first time, because love has no borders, and that's important to note. When we had the situation of the children turning themselves into the Border Patrol on the Texas border, I saw how the Border Patrol was responding, and out of their own pockets, maybe buying stuffed animals for the kids that were in detention. That's the side people don't see. So we have a working relationship. Yesterday, you saw that walk that we did, where we had people walking all the way from the wall to Los Angeles. So we're solidly in the spirit of understanding the migrant's plight, but we're also realize that we have to have the sovereignty of one's country, but do it in a respectful manner. Building a wall, in my opinion, is not the solution. We should be working together and building bridges, working with our neighboring countries in all directions, and I truly believe that's what's going to happen in the end.
So I agree with Enrique. We have a good relationship, not with just the Border Patrol, but with the union. We've done some things, some remarkable things. Shows you what happens when you think out of the box. You don't pigeonhole people and say, well, he's that, so we can't deal with him. Enrique is really well versed on normal immigration, but again, on the asylum, I'm going to beg to differ with him because I see it day to day. We're getting the people, they might not ultimately be approved, but they're already in the country. And you ask why we don't detain them. There's only about 35,000 bed spaces in the whole United States. So one of the things I've worked with some other groups some other community groups is, can we come up with humane housing while they're being detained? The wait for them to be adjudicated is way too long. It's not fair. But people are coming here with the knowledge that once they get in, if they don't show up for the hearing, nothing's going to happen to them. They're so far down on the enforcement policy of who's going to go after them. Nobody will ever go after them.
And how many people do you think there are like that in our country?
Well, if my station alone is doing 50 Haitians each and every day from the port, not counting the people we're catching that are coming through the port, and other stations, they're being farmed out to other stations because the port of entry can't hold that many people.
Yeah.
At one day they had 300 in line. So what they're doing now is holding them at different facilities so they're not standing in the hot sun, and they're bringing them up 50 at a time. That's each and every day in San Diego sector. So you can extrapolate the numbers out of that. That's several hundred a day just in San Diego sector. And other sectors are seeing the same thing, and we're seeing them, and not so much from Mexico. He's right that at my station, it's becoming almost a rarity to catch people coming over from Mexico. It's from the Central American numbers are coming back up again, the children and the family units. But it's Southeast Asia, Southwest Asia.
And Southeast Asia is scary because that's where Pakistan and some places are.
So we get a lot of, there was a journalist I know, and she's very liberal, but she was doing a story on Pakistani males that are all military age that are being arrested along the southwest border that are popping up in weird groups. Here's a group of Chinese with one Pakistani male. And so it's troubling.
That's frightening. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about some solutions, and we're going to talk about how you guys can come together and maybe work together with the legislature, with the president, on some sort of a logical conclusion to this. Obviously, it's a very multi-layered and complicated process and situation. But we'll see if we can come up with some common ground when we come back in just a minute. We'll see you then. All righty, welcome back. So let's talk about some solutions with our guests. Find some things that they can agree on, that they can work together on to make our world a better place. And welcome back once again, Chris Harris with the Border Patrol, and Enrique Morones, the founder of the Border Angels. So Chris, why don't you start? And I know that you guys do find a lot of common ground and perhaps work together to get some sort of legal solution to this all the way up to the White House.
First of all, we recognize, my union recognized from the top down, Brandon Judd, to my local president, Terry Shig, that we needed to reach out more to other groups, including Border Angels. And he's a founder, he's been around for a while. I'm not always going to agree with him on things, and he's not going to agree with me. I deal with other groups. My big belief is that you can always find some commonality and common ground. We're really becoming a polarized nation, and there's so much rhetoric and heat. We need to turn that down. And we need people of good faith to sit down, and I'm a firm believer, I'm from New York, you sit down, you break bread together. I've had coffee with Enrique, I've had a bite to eat with him, with others, and you're able to find that common ground, you agree to disagree, and you work together to fix that. And we need to get our legislators to start thinking in that way too. And I don't think we have to do one big, grand, unified theory of fixing immigration. But we can start little by little, and in our area in San Diego, we can do that.
Okay. Enrique, we have about 40 seconds.
Sure. So I agree that it's important to be working together. When we have our elections in November, it's very, very important that people, on whatever side of the aisle they are, get out there and vote. And Chris is totally entitled to his wrong opinion. You know, so I think it's important that we move forward. We move forward and show the humanity of all of this situation. I like to kid around with Chris, but yeah, it's important. We've been doing a lot of things together, and we're going to continue to do things together because this is a great country. So let's get out there and vote in November and find humane solutions to this immigration situation.
All right. Chris Harris with the Border Patrol, Enrique Morones, founder of Border Angels. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. All right. Thanks for joining us here this morning. Have a great day.